Welcome to Constant Variables, a podcast where we take a non-technical look at mobile app development. I'm Tim Bornholt. Let's get nerdy. Today on the show, we are beginning a mini-series that will outline what it takes to take an app from an idea to an app. And this process is done by using what we call the App Development Lifecycle. So what is the App Development Lifecycle? Well, basically it's the structure we use on all of our projects, whether they're brand new apps or whether we're supporting a long-term project. And it's exactly like it says, it's a cycle. We start at the first phase and we go all the way through to the final phase, and then it loops back to the beginning. This is done in 5 phases. So the 5 phases are strategy, design, develop, test, and deploy. Now, with all of this, we always start with strategy. One of our good friends, Kurt Schmidt, has told me in the past that if you don't have strategy, you may as well light a bunch of money on fire, because that is what you are doing when you go into this process with no strategy. So what is strategy? What is the strategy phase of app development? Well, basically, in a nutshell, we're just trying to figure out what we're building. The objective of the strategy phase is to build a specification document, and what we use is called user stories. So what we want to be able to do out of this strategy session is we want to have a document that we can take to our team, that's the designers and the developers, and say, build this. And they'll know exactly what is expected of them. And also, the importance of the spec doc is that it ensures that the expectations between you and us are very clear and written down. All of us need to know what the finish line looks like, and this document is that finish line. So when we're in the strategy phase, the first thing we do is we perform the strategy session. So the strategy session is meant to determine how users will navigate your app, how your users will receive value from the app, and how the app will meet your business objectives. This is usually a half-day process. It's at an office, usually ours, anywhere really with a whiteboard. That's pretty important. And 2 parties attend. So it's our team, which is usually me and my business partner, Rob. But really, it's whoever from our team can make it. And it is also your team, which again is anyone who can make it. But we prefer to have people who are either product owners, who are going to be the ones in your organization that are in charge of the app, or it's going to be people that are going to use it, the end user of the app. Now, one thing I want to highlight at the beginning here of this process of the strategy session is that it's really important that we are considering the end user throughout this whole process. Now, it's pretty easy to figure out what the business objectives are. I mean, you're going to be in the room, ideally. So, you're going to be there representing the business objectives. And since you're going to be paying our bills, we want to make sure that you and your objectives are being met as well. But it's one of those things in this industry that if you take care of your user, they're going to take care of you. And the user, maybe they'll have a seat at this table, but it's likely that they won't. So it's really important that somebody is there representing the user. So usually in this meeting, our job is to be the user, and we push back and we keep user experience at the forefront of everything we do in this workshop. So I just wanted to underscore that right out of the gate so that you are aware when we go through these strategy sessions that, we're probably going to play devil's advocate a little bit. And my wife hates that, but that's part of what I get paid to do. Is I want to make sure that at the end of the day, what we're building will not only be profitable for you, but also be something that your users actually want to use and something that they'll actually get value out of. So what do these workshops actually look like? Well, we meet with your team and we sketch out the main features of the app on a whiteboard. And this is done, we basically follow what we call the critical paths. Now, there's an actual term in project management and with computer science called critical paths, which kind of follows this, but leave that aside. What we consider to be the critical path is the key features, the key things that a user is going to do as they go through your app. So using Instagram as an example, I would say that Instagram has what I would consider 2 critical paths. Basically, you're either uploading a photo or you are browsing photos. So let's real quickly go over what those paths might look like. So from the perspective of uploading a photo, when a user launches the app, they should be able to take a picture or choose a picture they already have taken. Once that picture is chosen, they should be able to add on a filter, pretty crucial for an Instagram app. They should be able to make edits to the picture, crop it or the filters, or adjust the brightness, all that kind of good stuff. And then they should be able to add in metadata. So that would be the location, description, tag people. And once that metadata and the picture is to the user's liking, they should be able to hit submit. And then that picture is posted to their profile and to the Instagram service at large. The other critical path is browsing photos. Now if you look at Instagram, and when we launched this, it's 2019, if you look at it today, there's a ton of ways you can browse photos on Instagram. But I'd say the critical path, when we're talking about a minimum viable product that we would want to launch with in a phase 1, the critical path would be I launch the app and I'm presented with a bunch of photos that have been selected by, or that have been posted by people that I'm following. And it goes from the photo that was posted most recently all the way down to the earliest photo ever posted by one of my friends. And I can just scroll infinitely and get there. Now, again, in 2019, we have the whole algorithmic timeline where Instagram tries to predict what pictures you're most likely to like and, it shows those first. But again, going just for the purposes of this discussion, the critical paths there would be, again, posting a photo or browsing photos. During this whole process, again, I said we're following the critical paths. We're skipping over, while we're in this whiteboarding session, we're skipping over the things that aren't necessarily on the critical path. So if your app is something like Instagram, your sign-up screen is going to be pretty straightforward, right? It's going to include things like an email address, your password, maybe a username, and that's it. It's 3 things, and a profile picture, 4 things. We'll call it 4 things. I don't really necessarily need to whiteboard that out. I think our development team and design team could pretty much understand what that's going to look like. Same thing with like frequently asked question screens and privacy policy screens. We don't necessarily need to spend time going over those because there's pretty well established standards that we can follow. This is more those things that make your app unique and valuable to your user. Those are the things we want to explore. So while we're going down these critical paths, what we're doing is we're drawing sketches on the whiteboard. We're going screen to screen and we're showing basically an overview of how the user should be taken through those critical paths. So, if we're talking about that Instagram thing, we would draw one screen for, let's say, uploading a photo. We would draw one screen that would have like a picture of something and then a shutter button and then maybe something in the left corner that can let the user select a previously uploaded picture. Then we draw another rectangle that would have the picture that was taken with some edit controls on there. Then we would draw another screen next to it and they would have arrows, all 3 of these screens would have arrows linking to the next one. So when you tap on the shutter button, an arrow will be drawn from that button to the next screen. It's kind of hard to visualize, but I can try to put something in the show notes so you can see what these whiteboard sessions look like. But basically that's what we're doing is we're drawing some sketches so that we can make sure that visually we're on the same page with what the user should be seeing at a very high level. Once we've completed the strategy session, we should be leaving with, ideas that we've discussed at the workshop and these whiteboard drawings and a list of user stories. And we actually end up building out the specification document. So this document outlines all of the user stories for the phase of the system that we're building right now. So the entire system, I mean things like the login screens, forgot password features, the help section, privacy policy, all those things. We want to make sure that we have a user story so that, 1, we don't forget about it, but 2, that we can accurately estimate out things like timeline and budget. I've gone over and said user stories several times. So what is a user story? Well, like I said, I kind of described it a little bit back with Instagram, but basically at a high level, the user stories are an informal, this is a Wikipedia definition, user stories are an informal natural language description of one or more features. At a higher level, user stories is just a way that we can say, let's take the forgot password, for example. If we were reading this as a book, the title of this book would be, The User Can Reset Their Password. And there might be some chapters in there if you want to get technical with it. But basically the story would be, I launched the app. I forgot my password. There's a button on the sign-in screen that says forgot password. I tap that button. I put in my email address and I hit send. The app lets me know that an email has been sent to me to reset my password. I tap that link. I can provide a new password. And then I can go back into the app with the new password and sign in. That would be a very basic user story. So what we do is all the features that we talked about for your app, we generate a Google Sheet with all of those users listed in a prioritized order. So priority is important because, possibly down the road, if you have a few features that aren't critical to launch, we still want to document them so we can get them in this phase. But we want to be able to release the app as early as possible to your users to get feedback. So we want to put them in a prioritized order so that when we get done with, if you have 30 user stories and we can release the app after 15 of them are done, we want to be able to get those first 15 done right away and then come back and do the other ones, at a later point. Now, the priority is determined both by you as the client, but also by us as the development team, because there are often times where there's user stories like, I want to be able to send a friend request. Well, that might require a user story like, the system should be able to send emails to users to be completed first. Obviously, if you send a friend request, you want to make sure that they know about it. So other features might need to be built in order. They might require earlier features to be built before they can be built. So the priority gets determined by all of us, but we want to make sure we know what your priorities are in terms of what features can be done, so then we can put the stories in order of how things should get developed. Once we've written out all the user stories, we send the first draft over to you. And this is really where you get a chance now. It's a little bit of back and forth where we work together to make sure that at the end of the day, we understand what your requirements are. And we want to make sure that the user is going to be happy with an app that performs with the stories that are listed in this document. Now, once you've approved the spec doc, we can get going on generating the work order and contract. So the work order and contract are two documents that are, working hand in hand to achieve the same thing. At the end of the day, what these two documents say is it's more of a formal agreement that if we build everything that's written out in this spec doc, it's going to cost this much and take this long to build, and here's all the other kind of legal things that we need to talk about. So first, we'll talk about the work order. The work order outlines the project information at a high level and is more in layman's terms, I'd say. So this is where we kind of lay out what platforms and browsers the app will work on. Not every app is going to be needing to work on the original iPhone or the original Android phone. So we specify which versions most of your users are going to use. We also write out a timeline that can outline an estimated idea of when things are going to get done. We outline the cost for the development. And there's also other things in there that we request that we need from you in order to make sure the project is done. So things like logos, marketing copy, colors, things like that. All of that is outlined in this work order so that we're all clear on what needs to be done and at what time so that we can get this project completed. In addition to the work order, we also have the contract. So the contract is more of legalese that helps protect all of us to make sure that we're all getting what we're expecting. So I've heard it said that contracts are really meant to be done. It's good to do them at the beginning because it outlines, what could go wrong at the end. So it's most of those things that say, what happens if we miss a deadline, or what happens if you don't pay us on time, those kinds of things. But there's also other important things like how long does the warranty last and what does it cover, what is done with the intellectual property within the apps, and what happens, like I said, if parties miss deadlines and all that kind of good stuff. So those two documents combined with the spec doc are handed over to you. And once you have agreed to all three of those documents, you sign them and your part of the strategy phase is completed. But on our side, we've got a few more things we need to wrap up. This is a little bit of inside baseball. So if you don't care about this part, you can just skip on to the next part, or feel free to listen and learn. Once we have the completed spec doc, our team really can be cut loose because now we know exactly what we're building. So this is the point where, at least from a JMG perspective, we have me as one of the partners, and my job is to work with you to get a project going. And it is Rob's job, my business partner, to make sure that the project gets completed. So this is the point at which we do a handoff. So I make sure that Rob is crystal clear on all this stuff. I mean, he's usually in these strategy sessions as well, but he's also got a lot of things going on. So this is where I recap with him anything that might have changed, any things that he needs to know to make sure that he can execute on the spec doc that we have all agreed on. The other part of that we need to do before we move into the next phase is assign a team. So this typically, depending on your app, it's usually we've got a designer, an iOS and an Android developer, a back-end developer, and a front-end web developer. It's usually a team of 5. And then we have a kickoff meeting where this is where we go over the spec doc. We make sure that everybody is understanding of what needs to be built and timelines and all of that stuff. And also get kind of more of a backstory as to what is going on with the app. We found that these kickoff meetings are really important because we want to make sure everybody understands what's going on with the project, obviously. But one thing with development is that as well as we can specify things in the user stories document, there's going to be times and decisions that get made along the way that if everybody that's working on the project has an understanding of the ultimate goals and what's important with the project, decisions can get made, really small decisions that can steer the ship one way or another. And so we want to make sure that developers and designers are just clear on the expectations, more of the backstory of the project so that we're all pushing the project in the right direction and our team can have more autonomy to get the job done. And that's it. After we have the kickoff meeting between our developers, we're done with the strategy phase. So again, our objective at the beginning of the strategy phase is to come out with a completed user stories document, and now we've got it. So we finally have this document that's going to serve as the cornerstone for this project, and we're ready to enter into the design phase, which will be our next episode. Thank you for listening to the first part of this mini-series. Show notes for this episode can be found at constantvariables.co. You can get in touch with us by emailing hello@constantvariables.co. I'm at Tim Bornold on Twitter, and the show is at CV_podcast. Today's episode was edited by the jocund Jordan Doust. This episode was brought to you by the Jed Mahonis Group, who builds mobile software solutions for the on-demand economy. Learn more at jmg.mn.